Yeah, and what are some different ideas of like however we want to describe it? Like, is there different categories of kink or different? I know you said, maybe across the continuum. How would you kind of categorize some of this?
Oh gosh, I mean, one of the great things about kink is that it really can't be contained or defined, and it's something that kinksters would say, like, we don't want a box or rules or labels around us. And so, yes, there are some definitions and subcategories that are fairly common. You might hear things like cuckolding is a common kinky context, BDSM. So fun fact, BDSM has multiple meanings. Do you know what the B, the D, the S, and the M stand for?
Bondage. Maybe that's all I've got.
Right? I so appreciate you being honest about that. It's something, even like I learned this too reading the book The Leather Couch by Stephanie Gorlich. It's a great book for any providers who are trying to educate themselves on kink. So the B stands for bondage, and then the D has two meanings. So it's bondage and discipline, if you look at the B and the D together, or domination and submission, if you're looking at the D and the S together. And then the S also has two meanings, the submission, if it's with the uppercase domination. But when you're looking at it S and M, then it's sadism and masochism.
Interesting. Okay, so that can open up multiple different categories then. Right. And then so I don't cut you off, is there other common categories beyond that, or
yeah, there's so many different kinds of kink, but if you think about it, kink typically surrounds a few different themes. Playing with control, so who's in control when we're talking about bondage and discipline, who has authority when we're talking about a dom and a sub, and then when we're talking about sadism and masochism, it's really about sensations and evoking sensations. Who's evoking them, who's receiving them.
And when we even talk about I guess, very side note, what is your views of how 50 Shades influenced the worlds in a nutshell? I was thinking about this when I was thinking about that we were going to talk about this today, because I'm like, for the people I've talked to, like, I think for some people it really was actually kind of empowering and normalizing, but then I feel like the overall message was probably not beneficial. Like it continued the stigma again of what the fuck is wrong with these people. What is, just in a quick nutshell, I was just thinking about that earlier today, what is your view of how that influenced it?
I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I think what the film did well is that it brought the conversation about BDSM out into the zeitgeist for us to pick apart and to get more clear on. It also did give people permission to think more about their sexuality in expansive ways, which is great. What it did poorly is a common I would say, roadblock in the conversation about kink in pop culture. It conflated abusive relationship dynamics with the idea of kink. And that's why the film got so much criticism, because there were a lot of aspects about the way their relationship dynamic flowed that were not, in fact, ethical in terms of how folks in a kinky situation would actually set up their play.
Yeah, and I think that I found that to be disappointing, in how that was, even how it was so shame-based for her. Like obviously they both have their own shame in that, but that is, so let's kind of direct it to that, because I think that is so common, that when women enjoy that, let's say a sub and dom dynamic, that it becomes. And again, we understand all the cultural nuances of this, but it's so empowering for the man, because of course he wants to be dominant, but then it's like so shame-based for the woman if she wants to be submissive. And again, talking to women who are high-powered, like being in the submissive role is enjoyable. And so but then it's shamed. Like, what are your views on that?
I'm so glad you're talking about this, because regardless of gender, I work with so many people in high-powered jobs who in the bedroom want to be submissive. And it makes perfect sense because, again, our sex is a form of play. And so if people in their everyday lives have a lot of demands on them, they have very responsible roles, they can't let things, they have to make sure everything's buttoned down. That's a lot of pressure. So
Sure.
in sex play, they want a context where they can just lay back a lot of the time and let somebody else take the reins. And so it's an easier entree into pleasure for them when they're submissive, because in essence, they're just letting someone else be in control. And so again, here's a great example of how when we get curious about the play, do they really in their real lives want to be without power? No. But sex is the one place where they get to throw their hands up in the air and let someone else take the reins, right? Or the flogger or the whatever else they're playing with. So I mean, they get to live in that space, and it's a release for them. So I get this question a lot, and I'm gathering you might too, but I'm curious. I work with a lot of high-powered women who are executives, they're C-levels, they have a lot of responsibilities. They're the domestic engineers at home. They've got all of this responsibility, and they identify as feminists. And they are absolutely confused and have a lot of shame about the fact that they like to be submissive in bed. Because if I'm a feminist, how can I like something that's so patriarchal? Do you hear that a lot?
I mean, yeah, you're talking to her. And I think that is like, and it's been shamed to me, like, but you identify as a feminist. So why would you want somebody to control you? Or why would you want to, be dominated? And I have a lot of my clients that say that as well. And they say it in a way that they're embarrassed to say it. Like, but
Mhm.
I'm in control in every other area of my life. And for heterosexual, why would I allow a man to have that much power? And I hear them on that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing about our arousals. It doesn't always make logical sense, right? And so I want to just highlight that for a lot of folks who like things that go against socially what they believe in, often that is a big part of why it's so exciting to them, because it is that, again, contained space. We're agreeing that outside of this sex play, we're equals, right?
Mm.
And that's what allows us to be in this space and to play out this role of submission. I get a lot of men or penis owners who will say things like, I love small penis humiliation. Why? Even if they don't identify as having a smaller penis, it goes against their ideas of masculinity and the ways that they should be validated as men. And so it can be really confusing for them to like this kind of kink. And their partners often don't understand it either, because why would you want to be shamed for something like that? It goes against how we believe men to be, valued. Again, I'm putting that in big air quotes for
Yeah.
people listening. But that's just it. I can control the humiliation in that setting. I can sit with what it feels like to squirm and be uncomfortable, because that's not my everyday experience. And it gives them access to something within themselves that feels good.